like this. And now go ahead and add command list from /components UI command. So make sure you have that. And go ahead and add command empty from /components UI command. Again, just confirm that you have that. And inside, you're going to write no results found like this. And let's see if we can already test this. So I'm going to go ahead and click, and there we go. You can see that when I click on the search, it opens this small little model. So I'm actually going to keep it open like this. Great. And now let's go ahead and let's iterate over our data here that we are passing. So all channels, all text channels, audio, video channels, and members. So outside of the command empty, add data.map. Go ahead and destructure the label, type, and data like this. And go ahead, open an arrow function, write if data length return null. So if there are no items, we can just return null. Otherwise, go ahead and return a command group from /components UI command. So make sure you have command group imported here. And inside, let's go ahead and give it a key of label. And let's give it a heading of label as well. And let's go ahead and let's write data (map). So this is this inner data now, (map), and go ahead and destructure the ID, icon, and name like this, and return command item from /components UI command. So again, make sure you have that imported as well. Let's give the command item a key of ID like that. Let's go ahead and render the icon. And let's go ahead and write span name like this. There we go. Perfect. And now let's go ahead and let's write our onClick functions, which are going to activate once we click on this individual command item. So you can see how this looks. So I only have the general channel here, so that's the only thing showing. But if I create a new channel, let's say an audio channel, and write test audio. So let's create that because we finished all of that. And if I try now, you can see that I have a voice channel. And if I go ahead and create a video channel saying test-video here, you can see that in my search, I now have a video channel, audio channel, and a general channel. And one more thing I'm going to show you is I'm going to go ahead and invite some people here. So I'm going to go here. I'm going inside of my other account and I will invite myself. So I just joined, I logged in into another account. I'm pasting the invite link right here. And there we go. Now I am a guest here. And you can see that I can see the other members now. And you can see how this one has a shield icon right here because they are an admin. Perfect. So what I want to do is I just want to actually go back to my admin view rather than this one. Perfect. And while we're here, it seems to me that we are showing an indigo color for this admin. So let's just quickly fix that. So keep this open and go back inside of your server sidebar and find the role icon map right here. And for the admin, instead of text indigo, use text rose because it should be red. There we go. So now it looks better. Now it's indicating that this is an admin right here. Perfect. So now log out and go back into the admin of this account. Sorry, this server. Great, so I am back as an admin here, and if I click on search, you can see that I can see the guest member right here, and you can try and search, and you can see that it works for video, audio, general. So absolutely amazing. Users can now quickly access any any channel or member inside of this project. Perfect. What I want to do now is, well, first let's actually create this shortcut that when we press Command key or Control key, it actually opens this without us needing to click manually here. So go back inside of your server search component, which is located inside of components, server search right here, where we have all these command items. And let's go at the top right here, just below the use state. And let's create a use effect. So use effect from React like this. Make sure you import the use effect from React. And inside, let's write const down to be an event of keyboard event like this. And let's go ahead and write if event.key is equal to k and e.metaKey or e.controlKey like this. So if that's the case, in that case, go ahead and e.preventDefault and set open, open, reverse of the current state like this. And now go ahead and write document.addEventListener like this, key down, activate the function down, and on unmount, go ahead and write document, remove event listener on key down, and the down function like this. So let me just expand my screen so you can see this use effect. So we are watching for the key k and the meta key or the control key, and then we trigger the manual open and we add that listener to the document and we return the listener to prevent overflows. So now if I try command key, you can see that it opens my command to search general and other stuff right here, and I can also click on it manually. Beautiful job. So I can actually trigger that manually now, which is great. And let me just zoom that in. What we are going to do now is we're going to create functions which are going to happen once we select any of these items. So we want to redirect to those channels or to those members. So let's go ahead and let's add the parameters and the router. So const router is equal use router from next/navigation, and const params is equal use params from next/navigation as well. So make sure you have use params and use router from next/navigation like this. Great. And now what I'm going to do is write an onClick function just below this use effect. So const onClick like this. Let's go ahead and accept the ID and the type in this function, and let's write the props for that, which are going to be ID of type string, and type is going to be channel. And let me just expand my screen. So channel or member like this. And let's go ahead and open this function like that. So let me zoom out so you can see how this is supposed to look. So we have an ID and type, and the type of ID is string, and the type can only be channel or member like this. And once we select something, we're going to turn off that command. So set open is going to be false like that. If type is equal to member, in that case, we're going to return router.push open backticks /servers /params !server ID /conversations /ID of that member like that. And if type is channel, in that case, we're going to return router.push backticks /servers /params !server ID /channels /ID like that. Perfect. So now if you try, well, first we can try it. We have to assign this onClick to the command item. So go ahead and find the command item, which currently only has the key ID, and add onSelect to be an arrow function, which calls the onClick and passes in the ID and the type like this. So I'm going to zoom out so you can see it in one line. So command item has the key, and onSelect, onClick, and passes in the ID of that current item alongside with the type of the group which it is in. So if it is a channel, we are going to redirect to /channels. If it is a member, we are going to redirect to /conversations and then that member's ID. So if you try any of those right now, you're going to get a 404 request. On general, there we go, a 404 request. And if I try on a member, there we go as well, a 404 request. That's because none of these pages exist yet. We have not created any chat pages yet, but all of these are going to be chat pages. Great, so you finished the second component here, and now we can go ahead and actually render our channels and the rest of our members in this sidebar. So now let's go ahead and let's create a list of our channels and our members in this sidebar right here. So make sure you are in desktop mode so that you can see this sidebar here. I'm going to close everything and I am going inside of my components, server sidebar right here. So last thing we did was this server search right here. So what we are going to do now is a list of all of our channels. So let's go ahead and find the end of this div which holds the server search. So right here, but still inside of the scroll area. And let's go ahead and let's add the separator from /UI separator. So don't accidentally import that from Radix. So I'm going to change this to add components like this, and I'll just move it with the other stuff up there. And let's go ahead and give this separator a class name of bg-sync-200. On dark mode, it's going to use bg-sync-700, rounded-md, and my-2 like this. Great, and I'm just going to refresh this, and there we go. You should see a very small line here. So now let's go below this separator here, and let's write text channels.length like this, and go ahead and add double exclamation points at the start and add a question mark here. So we are going to turn this into a Boolean, right? So this is going to result to either true or false. So if the length is a positive number, that means that we can go ahead and render the text channels. And if it is a negative number, it's going to turn into a false, meaning that we will not render those channels. So go ahead and write end like this. And inside, go ahead and add a div with a class name of margin bottom 2 like this, and inside you're going to render a server section, which is a self-closing tag. Right now server section doesn't exist, so that is going to throw an error. So let's go ahead inside of our components a server and create a new file, a server-section.tsx like this. Go ahead and mark this as use client like this, and let's export const server section and just return a div saying server section like this. And go back to your server sidebar, and now you can import the server section from /server section. So let's check that out. So we have the header search, and now we have the server section, and no error should appear now, and you should have a small text saying server section in your server sidebar. Great. So now let's go ahead and let's add the props inside of this server section. So go back inside of this component and write interface server section props. Label is going to be a string. Role is going to be an optional member role. Make sure to import that from Prisma client like that. Section type is going to be either channels or members like that. Channel type is going to be an optional channel type from @prisma/client again, so member role and channel type like that. And server is going to be optional with a type of server with members with profiles from @/types. So I'm going to separate those two, and there we go. So those are our types. So now let's go ahead and let's extract all of those: label, role, section type, channel type, and a server, and let's map the props. So server section props like that. Great. So now let's go back inside of our server sidebar and let's assign all of those props here. So key, my apologies, not key, section type is going to be channels like this. Channel type is going to be channel type, which we already have imported here, .text like this. Role is going to be our current role, which we already defined in a constant in this server sidebar. And label is going to be text channels like this. Great. So just confirm that you have the channel type imported from @Prisma client, and make sure that you have this constant role, which looks to the server members and looks at your own and then extracts the role out of that. and then we pass that here, and that is the current logged in user's role. Perfect. So now let's go back inside of this server section and let's start developing. So inside of the server section here, go ahead and give this div a class name of flex items dash center justify dash between and py dash 2, like that. Go ahead and remove this div and create a paragraph which is going to render the label, which now says text channels. And let's go ahead and give this paragraph a class name of text dash extra small, uppercase, font dash semi-bold, text dash sync dash 500, and on dark mode we're going to use text dash sync dash 400, like that. Great. So now let's go ahead and let's conditionally render some actions for this channel section. So if role is not member role dot guest, so if we are either a moderator or an admin, and if section type is equal to channels, like that. So I'm just going to zoom out so you can see it in one line. In that case, go ahead and render the following. We are going to render an action tooltip from /action tooltip. So go ahead and import this from add/components action tooltip, like this. And inside, sorry, not yet, but let's go ahead and let's give this action tooltip a label of create channel and the side of top, like this. And let's go ahead and let's create a native HTML button element here, which is going to hold our plus sign from Lucid React. So make sure you import the plus sign from Lucid React, and I'll just move it to the top here. And let's go ahead and give this plus sign a class name of h-4 and w-4. And let's go ahead and give this button a class name of text-sync-500, hover text-sync-600. Dark mode is going to use text-sync-400. Dark is going to also, dark hover is going to be text-sync-300 and transition, like this. Great. And now let's go ahead and take a look at how that looks now. So if you are not an admin, you will not be able to see this plus button. So make sure that you're an admin or a moderator in this server. And now you can see that we have the text channels, and I can use a shortcut to create a channel from here. And we can actually already add a model to trigger that. So let's go ahead to the top of this server section and let's use our good old onopen from use model, from add/hooks use model store, like this. So make sure you import this. And now what you can do is use this button to add an on click here, like that, and call onopen. And we're going to call the create channel, like this. So you can see that now, once you click on this plus icon, a create channel option appears. Beautiful. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's add some alternative options, because this server section is also going to be used to load a list of our members. And we're not going to have a plus icon to add new members. Instead, we're going to have a cog or a settings icon, which is going to open the manage members portal from the sidebar as well. So go below this conditional right here and create a new conditional saying if role is equal to member role.admin, so only admin can access this, and if section type is equal to members, then go ahead and render the following. Again, we're going to render an action tooltip. In fact, maybe let's not write this all over again. Let's just copy everything inside of this conditional and paste it like here. There we go. So like that. And let's go ahead and let's just change a couple of stuff. So instead of this being a plus, this is going to be settings, like this, from Lucid React. So make sure you import that like this. And instead of open create channel, this one is going to open members and a data server, which we have from our prop. Perfect. So we cannot yet see this because we have not added that specific member section yet, but you're going to see it very soon. But that's it for our server section inside. Now what we have to do is go back to our server sidebar where we render the server section here, and let's go ahead and iterate over our text channels and map them. So text channels.map individual channel like this, and let's go ahead and let's return a server channel like this. And once you save, you're going to get an error because that does not exist. So let's go and create that. So I'm going to go inside of my server again. So this is inside of the components folder, and create a new file, server-channel.tsx like that. Let's mark this as use client like this. And let's write export const server channel like that, and return a div saying server channel like this. Very simple. Let's go back inside of our server sidebar and let's import this. So server channel like that from /server channel. So the same way we did with section, search, and header. Perfect. Let's go ahead and let's create an interface for this before we add any props here. So back in this newly created server channel component, go ahead and create an interface, server channel props like that. It's going to accept a channel, which is a type of channel from @prisma/client, a server, which is going to be a type of server, because we're not going to be working with members or their profiles, and an optional role of member role from @prisma/client like this. Great. So now let's go ahead and let's extract those here. So channel, server, and the role, and let's map them to the props, server channel props like that. And now let's go back inside of our server sidebar and let's give them everything they need. So first, let's do the key, which is going to be channel.id, and then let's do channel to be channel like this, role to be role, and server to be server like this. Let's go back inside of the server channel and let's actually do some development here. So first thing I want to do is create another icon map here. So const icon map is an object. If the channel is channel type channel type from @prisma/client. So let me show you everything I have imported here. Channel type, member role, and a server. So make sure you have the channel type. So channel type.text. In that case, we're going to render the hash icon from Lucid React. So make sure you have this imported here. And you can just go ahead and copy this 2 more times. If the channel is audio, in that case, audio. In that case, go ahead and add the mic icon from Lucid React. And if it's video, go ahead and add the video icon from Lucid React. So hash, mic, and video like this. Great. Now that we have that, let's go ahead and let's add const params to be use params from next navigation, and const router to be use router from next navigation as well. So make sure you have use params and use router from next/navigation. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's create a dynamic icon using this map here. So I'm going to write const capital I. So icon with a capital I like this, because it's going to be rendered as a component. It's going to be an icon map, open brackets, channel.type like this. Great. So now let's go ahead and let's replace this div right here with a button like that. Let's go ahead and add on click to be an empty arrow function. And let's write a class name, which is going to be dynamic. So import cn from @/libutils. Make sure you have the cn here. So I'm just going to separate those two. There we go. This is what I just imported. Great. And let's go inside. And for the first default values, let's add line-clamp-1, font-semi-bold, text- my apologies. So I went way ahead of myself. Okay. So what we're going to do is write group px-2, py-2 like this, rounded-md, flex, items-center, gap-x-2 like that, w-full, on hover, bg-sync-700/10 like that, and on dark, on hover, background is going to be sync-700/50. Let's give it a transition class, and let's give it a margin bottom of 1 as well. Great. So now we have that. And I'm just going to zoom out to see if we are already seeing something. It appears not yet. Okay. Inside of this button, let's render the icon. So icon, which we got from here, like that. And let's give this icon a class name of flex-shrink-0 w-5h-5 text-sync-500 and dark text-sync-400, like that. And let me just expand to see if we are seeing anything. And there we go. You can see that we are starting to see our first text channel inside of here. So right now, the only thing we have rendered is this icon, but slowly more stuff is going to appear here. Okay, so we have this icon right here. Now let's go ahead below the icon and add a paragraph like this, which is going to render channel.name. So now let's go ahead and give this paragraph a class name. So class name is going to be dynamic again. So CN, let's give it the default classes of line-clamp-1, font-semi-bold, text-extra small, text-sync-500, group-hover, text-sync-600, like this, dark, text-sync-400, but dark, group-hover is going to be text-sync-300 and transition like this. So we have a lot of classes, more than usual. That's because we are working with handling both the light mode and the dark mode at the same time. Okay, and now let's create the second, which is going to be the dynamic class here, which we forgot to do in this button, so we'll get back to that. So add a comma at the end of this initial class in the CN for this paragraph here. And let's write if params (channel ID) is equal to the current channel.id. In that case, render the class text-primary on dark mode, render text-sync-200, 200 like that. On dark mode, group-hover is going to be text-white like this. So let's go ahead and let's see this now. So there we go. You can see how our channel is looking now. Great. And let's just go ahead. Let's go back to this button element. And after the end of this first initial class inside the CN library here, add a comma and let's write if params (channel ID) is equal to channel.id. In that case, add a class name bg-sync-700/20. And on dark, that's going to be bg-sync-700 like that. Great, so let me zoom out a bit so you can perhaps see this a bit clearer like this. Great, so we have a lot of classes. That's because for every hover color, we are also doing the equivalent in dark mode, right? So we are having a fully customized light and dark mode. That's why we have so many classes. I know it's a bit hard to follow, but you can always just visit my GitHub and copy it if you're having trouble with it. Even I am getting confused in all of these classes, as you saw in the beginning when I started this component. Great. So what we're going to do now is we're going to enable some additional actions when we hover on this general class name, right? Because we're going to be able to delete the channel or edit the channel, or if it's general, in this case, we're not going to be able to do anything with it. So we're going to display a little lock icon here. So let's see how we're going to do that now. So go ahead and find the end of this paragraph right here. I'm going to zoom in back. So find the end of the paragraph and write if channel.name is not general, like that. And if a role, whoops, I went out of this conditional, and if role is not equal to member role, which we have imported .guest, so if this channel is not a general channel, and if the current role of this logged in user is either a moderator or an admin, or in other words, not a guest, only then are we going to render a div with the class name of ml-auto flex items-center and gap-x-2 like this. And let's add the action tooltip, which we can import from /action tooltip. So like this, and I'm just going to replace that with /components like that. And let's go ahead and let's give this action tooltip a label of edit like this. And inside of the action tooltip, let's add the edit icon from Lucid React. So make sure you have edit, hash, mic, and video from Lucid React. Great. And let's go ahead and let's just style this. So I'm going to go ahead and give this one a class name of hidden, but on group hover is going to be visible or block. W-4, H-4, text-sync-500 on hover, text-sync-600 like this. In dark mode, the default text is going to be text-sync-400, but in dark mode on hover, it's going to be text-sync-300 and transition like this. Great. And you can go ahead and copy this entire action tooltip here and paste it below and replace the edit icon with the trash icon like this from Lucid React. So make sure you have the trash icon here. And now if you try, you're gonna notice that nothing actually appears here. So let's create a new channel here called new channel. Leave it at the text. Make sure it's a channel type text because we are only rendering the text channels now. And there we go. Now you can see we have the edit and the delete options right here. And let's see if this looks right in light mode. There we go. We have both of those here. Perfect. Great. So now let's go ahead and let's add a little lock icon to the general channel right here to indicate that this channel cannot be modified in any way. So find the end of this conditional rendering right here. And after that, go ahead and write if channel.name is equal to general. In that case, let's go ahead and render a lock icon from Lucid React like this. And let's give it a class name of margin left auto W-4 H-4 text-sync-500 and on dark mode text-sync-400 like that, and just make sure you have the lock imported from Lucid React. So now you should see that our general has a lock button, but our new channel has an edit and delete option right here. Great. So we're gonna go back here to actually enable these models to edit and delete. But for now, let's just wrap up the entire sidebar here. Great. So we successfully finished the server channel. What we have to do is, of course, add this on click and enable the edit and the trash buttons here. But let's go ahead and let's go back inside of our server sidebar now. And the same way we did with text channels, so we added a conditional for the length of the text channels array. We rendered the server section which says, okay, these are text channels, and then we iterated over them. We're going to do the same thing, so you can copy this entire thing. So starting with the text channels length, including the server section and the mapping, and paste it just below there like this. So now if you take a look, we're going to have two sections of text channels here. But what we are going to change is that this one, the second one, is not going to be text channels, it's going to be audio channels like that. And we're also going to render audio channels.map here. So let's go ahead and replace the label with voice channels, because remember, towards the user, we are calling them voice channels. Only internally, we are calling them audio channels. And change the channel type to audio like this. Great. So let's go ahead now. Let's see how that looks. There we go. Look at this. I already have a voice channel. So if you don't, just go ahead, click create a channel and create a new one. So new audio like this. And it's going to appear here any second. There we go. New audio. Perfect. Now let's wrap it up by also copying this entire thing one more time and creating the video channels. So let's go ahead and paste it here, do the video channels thing right here and video channels.map. Let's call this video channels and channel type is video like that. Perfect. Let's go ahead. And there we go. I already have one. So you can test one more time if you don't. So new video like that. Type is video and click create, and there we go. You now have a new video channel here. Perfect. What's left to render in this sidebar are all the members available here. So we want to render this list right here not including ourselves, right? So we don't want to render ourselves, because in here we are going to render members which we with whom we can talk to, right? So when we click on them, we're going to open a conversation between one-on-one for that exact member and us. Perfect. So let's go ahead and you can copy this one more time, the video channels right here, and paste it. And change this to be members.length, change this server section to be section type members. That means that you don't need the channel type like that, and change the label to members like this. Like that. And go ahead and pass in the server option, which is optional. So server like this. So we are going to need them for members, but we are not going to need them for channels. So you can see in this server section where we have channels, we are not passing the server because we don't need them. So we need the server in the server channel, but not in the server section for section type channels. But when it comes to members, we do need that server. You're going to see why in a second. Great. So instead of rendering this video channels, we are going to render members, and instead of calling this channel, we're going to call it an individual member. And inside, we are no longer going to render just a server channel. We're going to render a server member like this. So go ahead and save that file, and let's go ahead now and let's just go inside of server and create a new file, server-member.tsx like this. And let's go ahead and mark this as use client, and let's export const server member like that, and return a div saying server member like this. Go back to server sidebar, and as always, just import the server member from /server member like this, and you should no longer be getting any errors. Great. So one more thing that I want to do before we begin this is just add a bit of more padding to this individual sections, because it kind of looks cluttered. So let's see how we can do that. So I'm going to go ahead and find where I'm just going to zoom in so I can see a bit better. Okay, so around each of this mapping, I want to add a specific div. So let's see how I can do that. What I'm going to do, I'm going to create a div around this text channels.map like this. So I'm just going to map that. There we go. So now it's wrapped in a div, and I'm going to give this div a class name of space-y-2 pixels like that. Great. And I'm going to copy and paste this and do the same thing for the audio channels here. And don't forget to end the div like that. I'm going to copy it one more time, and I'm going to go to the video channels around the map and close it here, indent this thing, and one last time for the members, I forgot we also have them. So around this map like this, render it here. There we go. So let's take a look if that improved, and I feel like now it has a bit of a more space between them. Yes, they don't look as cluttered. Great. So now let's go ahead and yeah, you can see that now, since we added the section type of members here, we have a create channel. It still says create channel. Oh, so we found a mistake. Great. So this should say manage members, right? So let's fix that very quickly. Let's go back inside of our server section. So it's this component right here. So because we said the section type is members, inside, see, if section type is members, and if we are an admin of this server, we are showing the settings button, and we are opening the members model, passing in the server. So let's change this label to be manage members like this. So let's see how that looks now. There we go. Now I can easily create a channel whenever I want, and I can also easily manage members without going all the way to here. Perfect. So let's finish up this server member component. Let's go inside of the server member component, and first thing I want to do is create an interface. So let's go ahead. I will zoom back in and write interface server member props. Member is going to be a type of member from Prisma client, which is also going to have a profile, which is a type of profile from Prisma/client, like that. and a server is going to be a type of server from @Prisma/client. So member, profile, and the server right here. Let's go ahead and let's destruct those two. So member and server, and assign the props here. So server, member, props, like this. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's go back to our server sidebar here, and let's give them the appropriate props inside. So first thing I'm going to do is give it a key of member.id. I'm going to pass in the member, and a server, like this. Great. So let's go back to server member now. And first thing first, I want to create a role icon map here. So const role icon map is going to be an object which is going to use the member role. So import member role from Prisma client like I did right here. So if member role is guest, there's going to be no icon next to its name. If member role is moderator, in that case, it's going to be a shield check from Lucid React. So make sure you have that imported, and it's going to have a class name of h-4, w-4, margin left-2, and text-indigo-500 like that. So I'm just going to zoom in a bit so you can see that in one line, copy and paste it, and don't forget to add a comma. Change the last member role to be admin. Instead of shield check, it's going to be shield alert, like this, and change the text indigo to text rows like this. There we go. Perfect. So we have our role icon map ready. And now let's go ahead and let's just add const params to be use params from next/navigation. Const router is equal to use router from next/navigation. So we're just preparing this because we're gonna need it later. All right, let's get this individual icon, but since this is already a component, we don't have to name it in a capitalized way. We can just do const icon is equal to role icon map member.role like this, right? In our server section, let's take a look at our server section just so I can explain the difference quickly. You can see, is it server section? No, it is server channel, I suppose. Yeah. So you can see that inside I had to put a capital icon. That's because I am just working with a type of Lucid icon. But in my server member, you can see that I'm not working with that. I'm working with a React component. So I can just name it like this, and then I can easily just render it as an icon. You can see the difference. I can just render this and this is going to work. But in my server channel, I cannot do that with this. Instead, I'm rendering it as a different element like this. So I could have done that here as well, but looks like I got ahead of myself and already wrote it in this way. So if you want to, you can refactor it, but you know, as long as it works. Let's go back inside of the server member now. So I just briefly explained why this is happening. And we actually don't have to render this icon right now. Let's instead replace this div with a button like this. And let's go ahead. And yeah, we can already render the icon inside. And let's go ahead and let's give this button a class name, which is going to be dynamic. So import cn from /libcn. Sorry, lib-utils, my apologies. All right, let's go back to the class name here. And let's go ahead and write group px-2, py-2, rounded-md, flex, items-center, gap-x-2, w-full, hover, bg-sync-700/10, on dark, on hover, bg is going to be sync 700/50, a transition class, and margin bottom of 1 like that. And let's add a comma and a dynamic class, params $.member_id is equal to member.id. In that case, we are going to render bg-sync-700/20, and in dark mode, it's going to be bg-sync-700 like this. So let me zoom out just a bit so you can see how this is supposed to look like. So I have this class name, these are all the default classes, and then I added a little comma here and added a dynamic class here. Great. So let's go back inside. And let's go ahead and let's render the user avatar, which we created a couple of steps back. So import user avatar from /user avatar or /components user avatar like this. And let's go ahead and give this user avatar a source of member.profile.image URL. And I am also going to give it a class name, because remember, we added a class name prop to this component so we can modify it whenever we want. And in this case, I want it to look a little bit smaller. So I'm going to write class name H-8 and W-8. That is for small devices, but on medium, we're going to have H-8 and W-8 like this. Great. Now let's go ahead and create a paragraph, which is going to render that profile name. So member.profile.name. And inside, let's go ahead and give this paragraph a dynamic class name. So class name CN font-semi-bold text-sm text-sync-500 like this, group-hover text sync 600 like that, dark text-sync-400, dark group-hover text-sync-300, and a transition like this. And for the dynamic ones, if params !channel ID is equal to member.id like that. Let's go ahead and add text-primary like this, dark text-sync-200 like this, dark group-hover text-white like this. Great, so let's take a look at how this looks now. So just make sure that you have a member inside of your member list right here. If you don't, just go ahead and invite yourself, log out, paste the link, and just go back in here. And there we go. You can see that now we have all of our channels here. We have all of our members here. We can already open some stuff here. Perfect. So one more thing that I want to do before we go back inside of the server channel and server member, so we activate these models here, is just quickly modify this create a channel buttons here. So you can see that right now when I click on text channel, the default channel type is text. So that is completely fine. But when I click on voice channel, it would be cool if it was selected to be audio by default, wouldn't it? Right? And same for video channel. It would be cool if it pre-selected video for me. So let's go ahead and quickly do that. So let's go back inside of the use model store. Make sure you save all these files. Go back inside of the use model store and let's extend our model data. So besides the possibility of accepting a server, let's go ahead and write channel type channel type from Prisma client. So make sure you import that like this. Great. And no need to change anything else here. And now let's go ahead and let's go inside of components server, inside of server section right here, where we call, let's find this create channel option right here and pass in the data channel type like this. And we already have the channel type in the props right here. Perfect. And now that we pass in that, we can go back inside of our components models, inside of the create channel model right here. And let's go ahead and let's fix this quickly. Just below this form, let's add a use effect from React like this. Like that, and let's extract the channel type from the data now. So in this use model, we can get the data, and below this is model open. Let's extract the potential channel type from the data like this. So there is a potential that we have a channel type, and in this use effect, let's go ahead and write if there is a channel type. In that case, form.setValue type is going to be channel type like this. And let's go ahead and add an else here. Form.setValue of type channel type.text like this. Great. And let's just pass in the channel type here and the form. And now let me just take a look at what this error is. So we can easily resolve that by going back into this const form use form and just add channel type pipe channel type dot text. Great, so let's take a look at now. I'm gonna refresh this, and if I click on voice channel, it's pre-selecting audio. If I click on video channels, it's pre-selecting video, and text channels by default is using the text option. Great, so I just wanted to modify that, and now we can go ahead and create our edit and delete options as well as our actual on-click options so they redirect somewhere. Great job so far. So before we move on, there are a couple of things that I want to fix before we actually do this edit and delete models. So first thing is that when I hover on the trash icon, it says the edit and it should say delete. So let's go ahead and let's resolve that. So I'm gonna go ahead and collapse everything here. I'm going inside of components, inside of server, and go ahead and pick the server channel right here and go ahead and find these two action tooltips. The edit one has the correct label, but the trash one should have the delete label like this. So let's go ahead and see that now. There we go. Now it says delete. Great. And what I notice is that when I switch to light mode, this sidebar seems to have the wrong color. Also, this one seems to be a bit too dark, and you can see that this plus icon is almost not noticeable. It doesn't have any border around it. So let's go ahead and let's quickly resolve that. So I'm going to zoom out just so I can see my sidebar at the same time. And let's close everything and let's go inside of components, navigation dash sidebar right here. All right, and I feel like we've made some mistakes here. So first thing that I notice here is that I have a background for the dark color, but I don't have it for the regular light mode. So after this dark BG color, go ahead and add regular BG, which is going to be a hex code of E3, E5, E8 like this. There we go. So now after I save, there we go. That already looks a bit better. Let me zoom in. Yes, so now this is clearly separated from this one. Perfect. And even this looks better now. Great. So that's just one thing that I wanted to do. So every now and then, make sure to switch to your light and dark mode just to, make sure that everything is still working fine. Perfect. So now we can go ahead and create this edit and delete functions here. So let's go ahead and let's visit our use model store hook. So I'm going to close everything and go inside of the hooks, use model store right here. And after delete server, I'm going to go ahead and add delete channel like this. So that's going to be our new model. And let's go ahead and let's add a new option for the model data here, which is going to be channel. So it's an optional type of channel, and you can import channel from @prisma/client. So I have channel type, and server imported from Prisma client. Make sure you have those as well. Perfect. Now let me close everything and let's go inside of components, models, and I'm going to copy and paste the delete server model because it's the most similar one we can reuse. So let's paste it here, and I'm going to rename this copy to delete-channel-model like that. Go inside of that file, make sure you're inside, and rename this to delete channel model like that, and change this constant isModel_open to delete channel like this. Great. Now we can go back inside of the providers, model provider, and go all the way down and add the delete channel model like this. And let's just fix this. So add/components like this. There we go. Perfect. And now let's find a way to trigger that. So we have to go inside of components, inside of server, and pick the server channel right here. And let's go ahead and let's add our const on open from use model like right here. So inside of the server channel, and I added an import of use model from /hooks use model store right here, and I destructured this on open function. Perfect. So now let's go ahead and let's find this trash icon and go ahead and add on click to be an arrow function which calls the on open delete channel like this, and pass in the server and the channel like this. There we go. So we already have both server and channel from our props right here, so channel and server, so that is safe to do. And let's try that out now. So in here, I'm gonna go and press delete, and there we go. We have a delete server prompt. So let's modify this delete server prompt to actually be the delete channel prompt. Perfect. Let's go inside of components, models, delete channel model right here. And alongside the server, let's immediately destructure the channel because we are going to need it here. Perfect. And now let's go ahead and let's change this from delete server to delete channel like this. We can leave the "are you sure you want to do this?" but instead of rendering the server.name, so let me just zoom out a bit so you can see inside of this span where we render the server.name, instead we're going to render channel.name like this, and I want to add a little hashtag before that so it indicates that it's a channel. So are you sure you want to do this? Hashtag new channel will be permanently deleted. So that looks good enough for me. And now let's go inside of this onClick function right here. And before we do anything, let's import our query string. So import QS from query dash string like this. Let's go back inside of the onClick. And let's go ahead and let's write const URL to be qs.stringify URL. The URL is going to be backticks like this /API/channels/channel ? Like that. And the query is gonna hold the server ID from params ? Server ID like this. So let's go ahead and just add the params. So const params is equal to use params from next/navigation. All right, so now we have that. And let's go ahead now and let's change this to use this Axios right here. Perfect. And after we delete our channel, no need to go all the way to /. Instead, we can go to /servers /params.?server ID like this. Perfect. Great. So if I try this now, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get a 404 error here. So let me try that. There we go, a 404 error. And now let's go ahead and let's create this route. Before we go there, it actually seems to me that we are actually destructuring this server for no reason at all. Or the other thing, we are using params instead of using that server. So let's actually change that. So this should still work, but I don't want to use params if we don't need to. So let's remove the params like this. Let's remove the use params. And instead of using params.server ID, let's use this destructured server from here. So we're going to write server ? .id like this. And same thing here. So server ? .id. So both would work because we are only able to call these models when we are inside of server ID parameters. But still, let's follow some conventions. Let's be consistent. All right. And now let's go ahead and let's actually create that route. So I'm going to close everything. I'm going to go inside of the app folder. Inside of API, we already have the channels. So let's create a new folder, channel ID like this. And inside, go ahead and create route.ts like that. Perfect. Let's export asynchronous function delete like that, which is going to have a request. And it's going to have params, which are going to be an object which store the channel ID, which is a string like this. Perfect. Let's open our try and catch block. Let's log the error inside of channel_ID delete error like that. And let's return new next response from next/server internal error and pass in, the status of 500 like that. Great, so we've done this a couple of times already. Perfect, let's get the current profile. So profile is equal to await current profile, and make sure you import that here. If there is no profile, return new next response unauthorized with a status of 401 like this. Great. Now let's also get the search params from new URL request.url like that. And let's get the server ID from search params .get server ID like this. Great. So if there is no server ID, let's return new next response server ID missing with a status of 400 like that. And if there are no params .channel ID, return new next response channel ID missing with a status of 400 like that. Perfect. And now let's actually delete the server. So let's go ahead and let's import db from /libdb. So like this. And now let's go ahead and write const server is equal await db.server.update like that. And inside, let's go ahead and write where ID is server ID and members sum profile ID is equal to current profile.id, which we store in this profile variable. And a role of that member needs to be either a member role, import that from @prisma/client, like I did right here, and I'm just going to move it to the top. So it needs to be either an admin or member role.moderator like this, one of the two. Perfect. And then let's go ahead and add the data. Channels, delete. We're going to delete the channel by the ID of params.channel ID and name not general. So we are never going to enable a deletion of the general channel, even if we send that channel's ID. It's like a security measure for us, even though in the front end we disable it. But remember what I said, front-end validation can easily be bypassed, and you always need to do the same on the server. So just write return next response.json server as well. Perfect. So if we try this, I think it should already work. So let me refresh right here. Let's check out this test audio. I'm going to click delete, confirm, and let's see if that's going to work. There we go. It's been deleted. Let's try with this text channel. If I delete it, there we go. That's deleted. Let's try with new video. If I delete that, that seems to be deleted as well. Perfect. All right. And now let's do the edit functionality here. So in order to do the edit functionality, we have to go back inside of our use model store right here. And after delete channel, add edit channel right here. All right. And we don't have to modify anything here. Instead, let's go inside of our components, inside of our models, and use the edit server model. Sorry, no, not that. Go ahead and find the create channel model. So that's the one that is the most similar to ours because it has the select options and stuff. And just change it to edit-channel-model like this. Make sure you are inside of that new file and rename this to edit channel model like this, and change this type to edit channel like that. Perfect. And now let's just go all the way to the bottom and change this from create to save like that. All right. And now let's go back inside of our components, providers, model provider, and at the bottom add edit channel model like that. From /models, edit channel model, and you already know I'm going to modify that to /components. Perfect. And now let's go ahead back inside of components, server channel right here, and add to this edit icon on click to be an arrow function, which calls the on open like that, edit channel, and pass in the server and this channel like this. Perfect. So now if I try the edit, that should work as well. I just refreshed, clicked on edit, and there we go. We opened a create channel, and we're going to modify it to match the functionality of edit channel. So let's go back inside of the edit channel component, inside of components models, edit channel model right here, and change the title from create channel to edit channel like this. Perfect. And now let's go ahead and find this use effect right here. And we're not going to need this inside, so you can remove this. You can leave the form inside and just write if there is a channel and we don't have that. So let's just do that quickly. So I'm going to remove this just so we don't get confused. So go back here to use model. We have data. Go ahead and extract the channel and the server like this. And actually, we are not going to have the channel type for this one. So you can remove that as well, like that. And you can just remove this to be like that. Okay, so just channel and server from the data, and the default values are this. So a bit different than the create channel one. All right, now inside, go ahead and check if there is a channel. Form.set value name is going to be channel.name. And form.set value of type is going to be channel.type, like this. Great. And let's just see. Let's also add the channel here. So channel, like that. And I think we can resolve this. Let me just explore a bit. So what we can do to resolve this is remove it from the default values, because we are going to fit it either way, but that seems to not work. Instead, let's try channel.type pipe like this and add a question mark here. There we go. That seems to have resolved it. Okay, so type can be either the initial channel.type or channel type.next. Great. So you might be wondering, why am I even doing a use effect? Why don't I just do channel type, channel.name here? Well, the problem is that this model is rendered before we receive this channel data right here. So it needs to be retriggered in the use effect, because this doesn't change dynamically. All right, so now I'm going to save this, and let's go ahead and let's try. So I will refresh this. Let me zoom out a bit. If I click on edit new audio, there we go. Channel type is new audio and channel type is audio. If I click on video, it says test video, channel type video. So it seems to work. Let's just create a new text channel just to test if it also works for that. So we have the new text channel. I'm going to click edit. I have the correct name and the correct type. Perfect. And what we have to do now is we have to modify the onSubmit function right here. So the onSubmit function is gonna actually be a bit different. So find the onSubmit QS stringify URL and add backticks /API/channels/channel?id. And in the query, instead of using params, we are no longer gonna be using params here. So you can remove that and remove the import for use params. Instead of using that, we're going to use the server from our data.id. So we have this server destructured from the data because we are passing in from the server channel component. Perfect. And I think that should be it. Now, of course, if I try, we are going to get a 404 error. So let's say edited channel like this. I click save. There we go. Actually, it's 405 because we have that route and we don't allow this method. Okay, so now let's go ahead back inside of our channel ID. So I'm gonna close everything. Make sure you save those files. Go inside of the app folder, API, channels, channel ID, route.ts. So we already created this delete function, and let's just copy and paste the entire thing. So I'm gonna copy that and just below paste it, and let's rename this from delete to patch like this. Great, so it has the same params. And alongside search params, let's also add a name and type from await request.json like this, because we also need that. Perfect. And alongside checking for profile, server ID, and params.channel ID, let's also check if name is general. So if somehow they bypass the front-end validation, let's give them a return new next response. Name cannot be add single backticks, single ticks, general like that, with a status of 400 like this. Perfect. So let me just expand this a bit. Okay. And now let's go ahead. And in this server, what we are going to do is not delete it, but we are going to modify it. So this is correct. The where query can stay the same. And now let's go ahead and modify this data a bit. So I'm going to delete everything and write it again so it's easier. So channels update where ID is params.channel ID, not name general, like that. So we cannot update the general. And let's go ahead and add the data, name, and type like this. There we go. And let's change this to channel ID patch like this. Great. All right, that seems to be okay. It seems I've triggered a error here. So let's see what that is about. Maybe you have that as well. Let's take a look at my terminal right here. Okay, so I'm just going to restart my application. npm run dev. Let's see if the error is still being triggered or if that was a one-time thing during my development. It seems to be a one-time thing during my development. Okay. And now let's go ahead and try this. So I have this new audio channel and let's see if I can rename it to edited audio. So I'm going to click save. Okay, it seems like there was an error. Let's go ahead and check it out. So it still says the same thing. Interesting. Okay, we have a patch function here, correct? Yes, we do, a patch function. Okay, so it should work. Let's see why it doesn't. I think it's because we left a post function inside of our model. So go inside of components, model, edit channel model right here. Let's go inside of the onSubmit. And yes, it is because we are doing axios.post when we should be doing axios.patch like this. So let's try this one more time. Let's change this to edited-audio and let's click save. And now it seems to be working. And there we go. This has changed to edited audio. Let's try with the text channel. Let's try general. It's not allowing us. Let's say edited text channel and click save. And now it's turned into edited text channel. Perfect. Let's see if I can do this new text. And I'm going to change the type to text and save this. Let's see if that's going to work. There we go. It's up with the text channels. Perfect. So we have the working delete. We have the working edit. Everything seems to be working exactly as we expect. We can also change this moderations from that shortcut that we added, this little icon right here. Perfect. And everything here seems to be matching as well. Perfect. So we are finally ready to start creating our chat headers and chat messages and chat inputs and slowly, and also of course video chats, right? So we are ready to do that now. Great job so far. So now let's go ahead and let's actually create this actions when we click on channels and members, that we actually get redirected not to the server ID page, but either the channel page or the conversation page. So let's go ahead and let's revisit our server channel first. So go inside of components, server channel right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to add an onClick function. So const onClick like this, and go ahead and just write router, which we have right here. Make sure you have use router from next navigation inside of the server channel component. Router.push open backticks /servers /params !server ID /channels /open object channel.id like this. And then we have to add that onClick to this empty arrow function in the button. Perfect. So if you go ahead and try now and click on any channel, you're going to get redirected to a 404 page. Perfect. Well, not perfect, but we're going to fix it. One thing I want to bring your attention to is that if I try and edit, a model opens and then I get redirected. That's because this global button on click right here, right? Let me just expand my screen, is overriding this clicks inside on the edit and the trash. So let's go ahead and let's do this now. I'm gonna go ahead and write const on action, and we're gonna accept event, which is react.mouse event, and an action, which is a model type. And you can import that from /hooks model store. So if you cannot import it, make sure that you have the export in front of type model type like that. So just import the model type alongside use model from /hooks use model store and confirm that you have the export in front of type model type. So now we get access to all of this here. Let's go back to our on action here. And let's go ahead and write event.stop propagation like that. And then on open action, so we know which model to open dynamically, and let's pass in the channel and the server as the data. And now let's use this on action instead of using this right here. So instead of calling on open here in the edit, go ahead and just call on action and pass in the edit channel like this. Let's see if that's correct. What did I just write? Oh, an event as well. My apologies. So an event, pass in an event, comma, edit channel like that. And same thing here, get the event from the arrow function and replace this with on action, pass in the event. And what is this one? This one is delete channel like this. Great, so let's try that now. And now I should not get over right. So if I click on edit, there we go. No redirect. If I click on delete, no redirect. But if I specifically click on a channel, I get a 404. So that's exactly what I wanted to do here. And I think I noticed one slight mistake here. And that is inside of our components server member right here, if I remember correctly. So in the button, I'm comparing params.member_id to be equal to member.id. But right here, I'm using params.channel_id to check for member ID. So let's just change that. So above the user avatar, in this paragraph which renders the member profile name, change the dynamic class to look for member ID instead of the channel ID. So you won't be able to see any differences yet. That's because we have not created any of these classes. So all of them lead to 404. And now let's go ahead and let's add the onClick inside of this server member, because right now I can click as much as I want and nothing happens. So we are inside of that server member right here. And let's go ahead and let's add an onClick function. So const onClick is an arrow function which calls the router.push. So make sure you have the router and use router from next navigation. And it calls the router.push /servers/ params.server_id, add a question mark here, /conversations /member.id like that. Perfect. And let's go ahead and add this onClick on this button here like that. Perfect. So now if I try and click on members, I get to a 404 page. So we did a very simple onClick function and added it to the button that holds our user avatar and the name of the member. Perfect. So we can now go ahead and actually create a very simple page, just like we have with this server ID page. And instead it's going to render the channel ID page or the conversation ID page. So let's go inside of our main folder. So I'm going to close everything. Just remember to save your files. Go inside of app folder, main, routes, and we have the server ID here. So let's go ahead inside and create a new folder called channels like that. And inside create another folder in square brackets channel ID like that. And inside create a new file page.tsx like this. So main, routes, server ID, channels, individual channel ID. And let's just go ahead and add channel ID page like that and a div channel ID page like this. Perfect. So now if you go ahead and try and click on general, you should no longer get a 404. Instead, the general should be selected like this, and in the URL you should see the /channels and the ID, and you should see the channel ID page. And same thing for this other channels right here. Perfect. So let's go ahead and do the same thing for the conversations now, aka the members. So I'm going to collapse everything, go inside of app, main, routes, inside the server ID, create a new folder called conversation like that. And inside create a new folder called in square brackets member ID like this. And inside a new page.tsx, which is just going to be member ID page with a div member ID page like this. Great. And now if you click on this one, all right, we are still getting a 404, and I think I know why. Yes, I named this folder conversation when it should be conversations, multiple of them. Great. And now I think it should automatically, there we go. So you can see how it looks now. You can see how it's test selected. Very nice. Perfect. Let's go ahead and switch to light mode to see if this is still okay. And it seems to be looking good. Great. So I'm going to continue in dark mode to save my eyes. One more thing that I want to do now is that I'm going to remove my URL. Let me just click here. There we go. So you can just click on your server. I don't want this state to exist, so I always want user to immediately be redirected to the first channel we can find, which in our case is always going to be the general channel, because we don't allow anyone to delete this general channel. So whenever I refresh on this server ID or just click on this, I want to be immediately put into a general channel. So let's go ahead and do that now. So let's go inside, well, let me close everything. Let's go inside of our app folder, inside of main routes, inside of server ID, and find the page.tsx that currently just says server ID page. And inside of here, let's go ahead and let's turn this into a asynchronous function. And let's go ahead and give it an interface of server ID page props. And it's going to accept params of server ID, which is a string like this. And let's go ahead and let's extract those params here and let's add them to the props server ID page props like this. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's fetch the current profile. So const profile is equal to await current profile from s/lib current profile like that. Of course, make sure you don't accidentally have use client at the top. So this is a server component. If there is no profile, we can return a redirect to sign in from clerk like this. So make sure you import redirect to sign in from clerk like that. And I'm just going to separate these two imports. So that's if we don't have a profile. All right, and now let's go ahead and let's attempt to find this server. So const server is equal to await db, which you can import from s/lib db, like I did right here. db.server.find unique, like this, where id is params.server id, members, some have a profile ID of the current profile.id, so we are confirming that we are a member of this profile. And let's go ahead and add include channels where, and let's find the general channel using the name general like this. So this is why we don't allow users to rename this channel or delete it, because we need it to redirect the user. And let's order created at ascending like this. Great. And now let's go ahead and write const initial channel to be server (dot channels) and pick the first one like this. And if initial channel (dot name) is not general, so make sure you don't misspell general here, in that case return null. So this should technically never happen, but just in case, we're just going to display an empty page, even though it should absolutely never happen. And instead of this return a redirect from next/navigation. So make sure you import redirect from next/navigation like that. And return a redirect /servers /params.server ID /channels and /initial channel (dot ID). And let me just expand this so you can see it in one line and maybe zoom out. There we go. So we find the initial channel, we check if the initial channel name is general. If it is, we go ahead and redirect the user to server ID /channels /that initial channel .id. And there we go. You can see that now, no matter how many times I refresh, or if I click on this right here, oh, maybe it's not working. Let me try and refresh again. Okay, it seems to not be working. Let's go ahead and explore why. So I'm not exactly sure because this server ID page, I don't think this even exists in the code. So this could be some cache, or maybe I didn't save this file. Maybe it's that. Okay, it was that. I didn't save my file. Okay, so now you can see that if I try and click on my server, you can look at my URL, how it's immediately redirecting to the initial channel. And yeah, I can go ahead and remove the /channels and just leave the server ID, and you will see that I'm immediately redirected back to the general channel. Perfect. So this is exactly what I wanted to do. Exactly that. Perfect. And now we can go ahead and finally start developing the header for our chat, the body for our chat, the input for our chat, the messages, the videos, the audios, everything else. Great job so far. So let's go ahead and let's create our chat header component, which is going to be displayed right here at the top. So in order to do that, the first thing we have to do is we have to go inside of our channel ID page. So I'm going to close everything just so we repeat our knowledge of our folder structure. So we're going to go inside of the app folder, main folder, routes, server, server ID, and our newly created channels folder, which holds the individual channel ID right here, and choose that page.tsx. So what we have to do in here is we have to load the current channel using the ID which we have, and we have to load the current member. So let's go ahead and let's turn this into a asynchronous function like this, and let's go ahead and let's create the props for this channel ID page. So interface channel ID page props like that. It's gonna have params, and inside of those params we are going to have a server ID, which is a string, and let me just zoom in a bit, and channel ID, which is also a string. So how do I know that we are gonna have both the server ID and the channel ID? Well, because of the folder structure. So we are inside of server ID and we are inside of channel ID, which means both of those are going to be inside of our URL. So as long as you've named them correctly, you're gonna have them inside of every server component inside of this structure. So now that we know that we have those, let's go ahead and let's extract the params from the props, and let's just map them to channel ID page props so our typing is correct. Great. And now let's go ahead and let's fetch the current profile. So const profile is equal to await current profile from add/lib current profile, like I added at the top right here. If we don't have a profile, we can go ahead and return redirect to sign in from clerk. So just go ahead and write this and make sure you have imported this from clerk next.js. And as always, I'm going to separate those two imports. Great. Now we can go ahead and import our database util. So import db from add/lib db like this, and let's go ahead and let's fetch our channel using the ID. So const channel is equal to await db.channel.find unique like this, and let's go ahead and write where ID is equal to params.channel ID like this. Great. And now let's write const member is equal to await db.member.find first like this, where server ID is equal to params.server ID, and profile ID is equal to profile.id like this. Perfect. So we fetched the channel which holds this ID, and we found a member using a server ID and its respective profile ID. So there can be many members with this profile ID, but the member we want to find is one that is inside of this server and holds this profile ID. Because remember, a profile can have as many members as it wants. So whenever we join a new server, we become a new member of that server, but that is still the same profile ID. So to identify the one member we want to find, we also have to specify the server ID. So that's why we are using find first and not find unique, because we have not specified in the schema that these two fields need to be unique. Perhaps we should have done that, but let's go ahead and let's continue developing with what we have. Great. So let's go ahead and now write if there is no channel, or if there is no member. In that case, we can redirect from next/navigation. So make sure you import redirect from next/navigation, and I'm going to move it to the top. and let's go ahead and redirect the user back to slash because they're trying to access a channel that they don't have access to. Great, and now that we have this, let's go ahead and let's write a class name here with bg-white on light mode, and on dark mode we're gonna have bg-open square brackets and a hashtag of 313338 like this. So 313338 like that. I added a one extra 3 if you didn't notice, but I removed it. Great. And a flex-col, and h-full like this. Great, so let's see. I'm not even sure if the color has slightly changed or not, but anyway, this is how I want it to look like. Now inside of here, let's go ahead and let's remove this text and let's write chat header like this. And once you save, you're going to get an error because chat header does not exist. So let me just refresh this page to make sure it's loading. There we go. So chat header is not defined. Make sure you have your app running. Let's go ahead and let me close everything and let's go inside of components and create a new folder called chat. And inside here, we're gonna hold all of our chat components. So create a new file, chat-header.psx like this. Let's go ahead and let's import hash from Lucid React because we're gonna need that. And let's go ahead and let's just quickly fix the error. So export const chat header like this and return a div saying chat header like that. Let's go back inside of our page, which is located inside of the app folder all the way to the channel ID page here. And now we can safely import this from add/components chat header. Great. And now if you save this file, you should not see an error anymore. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and let's create an interface for this. So interface chat header props are gonna have a server ID, which is a string, a name, which is a string, a type, which is gonna be either a channel or a conversation. Because remember, we are going to reuse all of our chat components for both the channel view, the video or audio channel view, and also for direct one-on-one member conversation view. So we have to adapt the props to change the UI appropriately. And an image URL, which is going to be an optional string like this. Great. So let's go ahead and let's extract all of those here. So server ID, name, type, and image URL. And let's go ahead and map those to chat header props like this. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and let's give this div a class name of text-md font-semi-bold, and let me just expand my screen so we can see as much as possible in one line. So font-semi-bold, px-3 flex items-center h-12 border-neutral-200 on dark mode border-neutral-800 and border-b-2 like that. Perfect. So let's go ahead and let's see how that looks now. And there we go. You can see that we finally have this little chat header here that matches the height of this drop down right here. Perfect. And if you're wondering, well, when comes the time that we actually enable the mobile view, where this is where we're gonna hold that little toggle button. So let's go ahead and let's just add it here now. So I'm gonna go ahead and write menu from Lucid React right here. So make sure you import the menu here. And there we go. So that's how that is going to look like. Of course, now it's not functional, but later we're going to turn it into a component, which is going to trigger a drawer, which is going to hold this navigation sidebar and this server sidebar. So that's how we are going to handle mobile. But before we get there, let's go ahead and let's write a dynamic render here. So type is equal to channel. In that case, let's go ahead and return a hashtag like this. And let's go ahead and give it a class name of w-5 h-5 text-sync-500 dark mode is going to have text-sync-400 and margin right of 2 like this. And right now we are not seeing anything. That's because we have not passed any props to this chat header. So let's go back inside of our page, which renders the chat header, and let's just give it some props. So I'm going to give it a name of channel.name. I'm going to give it a server ID of channel.server ID. And I'm going to give it a type of channel like this, because we are using this chat header for rendering our channel. And there we go. You can see how a little hashtag has appeared right here. So let's go ahead and let's continue the development here. After this hash right here, let's go ahead and let's add a paragraph, which is going to render the name like this. And let's go ahead and give this a class name of of font semi-bold, text-md, and text-black, and on dark mode, text-white, like this. There we go. Great. So we are not entirely done with this chat header, but we're going to continue the development of it when we enable our one-on-one conversations. So obviously it's okay that it says general for stuff like this, for these channels. You can see all of this is correct. When I click on new text, it says new text. On general, it says general. On edited audio, it says edited audio. But when I click here, we're going to modify this a little bit. Instead of showing a hashtag, we're going to show the actual user image and some other stuff. But we're going to come to that later. What I actually want to do now is I want to create the mobile toggle button. So I'm going to turn this icon of menu into an actual working toggle. So in order to do that, we have to add another component from ShadCN. So let's go ahead to ShadCN documentation and find the component under S sheet right here. There we go. And let's go ahead and copy the command it needs using npm like that. I'm going to go inside of my terminal here. I will shut down the application and I'm going to write npx ShadCN UI at latest add sheet like this. Great. And just confirm this installation like this. And you can npm run dev your application again. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's go and close everything and go inside of your components and create a new file called mobile-toggle.tsx. So outside of any folder except the components folder. And let's go ahead and let's write export const mobile toggle. It's going to be a simple function, which is going to return for now. Let's add that menu icon from Lucid React. Like that, so very simple. And now we're gonna go back inside of our chat folder, find the chat header, and replace the menu icon with mobile toggle like this from /mobile toggle, or in my case, I'm gonna replace it to /components and separate the two, and we can remove the import for menu from here. And right now, everything should say exactly the same because that's the only thing we added in the mobile toggle. So now let's go ahead and let's import everything we need from our new sheet component. So go ahead and import sheet content like that, and sheet trigger like this from @/components/UI/sheet like this. Great. And now let's go ahead and replace this with sheet like this inside a sheet trigger, which is going to have as child prop. And inside, we're going to add a button from ./UI button. So make sure you add this import, and I'm going to replace it to /components like this. So it's going to be a button which is going to render our menu icon. And let's give this button a variant of ghost, a size of icon, and a class name of MD hidden. So we only want this to show on mobile devices. Perfect. And below the sheet trigger here, add a sheet content like that. Let's go ahead and give it some props. So a side is going to be left. Class name is going to be padding-0, flex, and gap-0 like this. Perfect. So inside of this content, let's go ahead and create a div element with a class name of w-open square brackets 72 pixels like that. And inside, you're going to render the navigation sidebar from /navigation sidebar. I'm just going to replace that to /components like this. So we get the navigation sidebar from the navigation folder. And we're also gonna add a server sidebar from /server sidebar like this. And let's just replace this to components as well. Perfect. So let me just zoom out a bit so you can see it in one line. So we got the navigation sidebar from /components navigation sidebar, as it is inside of this folder, the navigation sidebar, and same thing with the server sidebar inside of components server folder. So server, and we have the server sidebar right here. And one thing that is missing inside of here is the server ID, which means we are also going to need the server ID from the mobile toggle. So let's go ahead and just quickly add the server ID here, and let's map the props to it. So server ID is a type of string like this, and then we can safely pass the server ID here as well. Perfect. So now let's go back inside of our chat header component where we render the mobile toggle, and let's go ahead and pass in the server ID to be server ID like this. There we go. So you can see now when I expand, and let me just refresh to make sure all of this is up to date. Let's just wait a second for this to load for me, and there we go. You can see that now when I have this active in desktop view, I don't have the mobile toggle, but when I collapse it, it becomes active. And if I click, you can see that the drawer opens. Amazing. So exactly what we wanted, and I can change the channels from here like this. I can trigger a model to create my own server, create my own channel. Perfect. So exactly what we wanted for mobile view. And we don't have to worry that this mobile toggle is all the way here in this chat header, because remember, we do a redirect. Whenever a user joins a server, we immediately join the general channel here. So they're always going to be, if they're on mobile, they're always going to see this button right here to trigger this. Perfect. So we have successfully wrapped up a big part of chat header, and now what we have to do is modify this chat header to match our one-on-one conversation view. So when I click on Antonio here, I wanted to show the same chat header but a little bit modified. So it's time for us to wrap up our Prisma schema. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm gonna close everything, and I'm gonna go inside of the Prisma folder, schema.prisma right here. So far we've added the server model, the profile model, member, and the channel model, but we also have a couple of more models missing from here. So let's go ahead and let's create the model message like this. It's gonna have an ID, which is a string ID, and a default value of UUID like this. It's gonna have content, which is a string of db.text, so we allow long messages. We're gonna have an optional file URL, which is an optional string, so we add a question mark at the end, with also a db.text because URLs can get pretty long. Let's create a connection with the member ID who will send this message like this, and write a member at relation like this, fields, member ID, references ID, and on delete is going to be cascade like this. Let's see if I can expand my screen a bit more, and I seem to have made a typo here, so let me zoom out. There we go, like this. And now we have to add this relation back to the member. So let's go ahead and find the member right here, and after the server ID here, let's go ahead and add messages to be a message like this. There we go. And now you should no longer have this error right here. Perfect. But that's not the only relation we need. We also need a relation with the channel this message is being sent to. So channel ID is a string and a relation of channel at relation, fields, channel ID, references, ID, and on delete, cascade like this. So let me zoom out so you can see that. And now we have to go ahead back into the channel and add the relation. So let's find the channel, it's right here. And after server ID, go ahead and add messages, message like this. Perfect. And let me just go ahead back to the member here, and let's write this messages with a lowercase m, so messages like this. There we go, perfect. And now before we wrap this entire thing up, let's also add a deleted boolean. So deleted is a boolean with a default value of false. So we're going to use a soft delete method. Once a user attempts to delete the message, we're not going to remove the record from our database, but we're going to clear the content and we're going to turn this to true. And let's also add @index to be a channel ID and @index to be a member ID like this. And let's also go ahead and write created at to be date time of default and now, and updated at to be a date time at default, at updated at like this. Perfect. So we've wrapped up our message model, which will be for the channels. Now we have to create a conversation model and a direct message model. So let's go ahead below that and write model conversation, which is going to have an ID of string @ID @default UUID like this. And now it's going to have two members. So member 1 ID is going to be a string and member 1 is going to be a relation to the member. But since we already have a couple of relations to the member, we have to give this one a name. So relation, and go ahead and write member 1 like this and pass in the fields, which are member 1 ID, and pass in the references, which is an ID, and on delete cascade like this. Perfect. And do the same thing for member 2. So I'm going to copy and paste this. And let's rename this to member 2 ID like this. And this one is going to be member 2. And this relation is going to be member 2 as well. And everything else can stay the same. Actually not. So we have to change this fields array to member 2 ID like this. Great. And now let's go ahead and let's find our member model, and let's just add these relations here. So to the conversation model using this member 1 and member 2. So go ahead and find the conversation model. Sorry, not the conversation model, the member model right here. And below the messages, go ahead and add conversations initiated like this to be a conversation like this, and a relation of member 1 like this. So can I zoom in? I can. Great. And we also need another one, which is going to be, so you can copy this, but this one is going to be called conversations received like this. And this one is going to be member 2 like this. So we created a relation back to the conversation model using the member 1 and member 2 fields, and in here we're going to store them as conversations we initiated and conversations we received like this. So we can handle both being the person who created a conversation with another member and also a person who got invited for a one-on-one conversation by some other member. So we need to handle both of those cases. Perfect. And now let's go ahead back inside of our conversation model here. And what we have to do here is just fix this warnings. So go ahead and add that index right here for member 1 ID, and add that index for member 2 ID like this. And also let's go ahead and let's write @that unique, and let's write a combination of member 1 ID and a member 2 ID like this. Perfect. So each conversation can only exist with a unique member 1 and member 2 ID. So we cannot have more than we cannot have two of these conversations with the exact same members, because in every server we're going to have a different member ID ourselves, and the other user is also going to have a different member ID themselves. Perfect. And let me actually see if I even need an index for this one. It seems like I don't, right? So it seems like it's only asking for the member 2. So let's remove this member 1 ID. It seems like the only thing we need is the member 2 ID. If you're having issues, you can just add both of them. But as you can see, when I remove the 2, this is the error, the warning. But when I remove the 1, there's no warning. So I can keep it like this. So let me just zoom out one more time so you can see how it looks in one line, like that. Perfect. And we are not done yet. So what we have to do now is we have to create our last model, which is going to be direct message model. So the reason we have to create a different model and we cannot reuse this message one is because this message one is best to keep separated and only used for the channel relation. You can see that we have pretty strict channel relations here. So we can go ahead and create a very similar one called direct message, which is going to be used inside of one-on-one conversations with the members. So let's go ahead and write model direct message like that, which is going to have an ID of string at ID and default of UUID like this. It's going to have content, which is a string, and db.text, and it's going to have file URL, which is an optional string, and db.text like this. Now let's add a relation to the member ID, which is a string, and member, which is going to be a member relation fields, member ID, references, ID, and on delete cascade like this. So let me zoom out so you can see it. Great. And we're also going to have a relation to the conversation we are in. So conversation ID is a string, and conversation like this, add relation fields, conversation ID, references ID, and on delete cascade like this. Perfect. So now let's go ahead and let's go inside of our conversation here. And below this member 2, let's go ahead and add direct messages to be direct message and an array like this. And that way we fix the error for this one. And now we have to go all the way to the member to add a relation with the direct message. So find the member right here, and you can go just below messages and just add direct message like this, direct message, and make sure this is direct messages like this, so multiple. Perfect. So we have a relation with both of those now, and we can go back safely inside of our direct message here. And let's go ahead and zoom in back, and let's wrap this up by adding it a created at field, which is a date time of a default value of now, an updated at, which is date time, at updated at like this, and it's also going to have a deleted, which is a boolean with a default value of false. And let's just not misspell this, so boolean, and let me just move it above these dates like that. And lastly, let's just create these two indexes to fix these errors. So at index is going to be a member ID, and at index is going to be a conversation ID like this. Perfect. So make sure you have no errors and no warnings. You can always go to my GitHub and just copy the entire Prisma schema. And now let's go ahead and push all of that. So save that file. Let's shut down the application, run npx prisma generate to add all of these new models to our node modules, and npx prisma db push to push those new collections to our PlanetScale or whatever you used for your MySQL database. There we go. So all of that is ready, and now we are ready to modify our individual member page. So when I click on members, did I start this? Let me just go ahead and start the application. So npm run dev like this. Let's just wait a second for this to load. So basically what we're gonna do now is similar to the channels. We have this chat header which says the general channel. We're gonna do that now, but for the member ID page. And we can do that now because we have all the necessary models to create conversations and then load the other member's name in here, right? When I click on this user, I expect their user to show. Perfect. So let's continue. And first thing we want to do is create a util for finding our one-on-one conversations or creating our one-on-one conversations. So what is the flow that's going to happen once I click on this member right here? So we're going to check whether we already have a one-on-one conversation with this user, with this member, Or if we don't, we're gonna go ahead and create one, because as opposed to channels which are immediately created and everyone can be a part of them, members don't work like that. So we are only gonna create a one-on-one conversation if anyone ever clicked on that user. Great. So let's go ahead inside of our lib folder and create a new file called conversation.ts like this. Great. And let's go ahead and let's create two functions here first. So what I want to do is import our database from ./db, and I think you already know I'm going to replace that to @libdb like this. Perfect. So let's go ahead and first create our find conversation function. So const find conversation like this is going to be an asynchronous function. I'm just going to zoom out just a bit like this, which is going to take the member1 ID, which is a string, and it's going to take a member2 ID, which is also a string like this. And that's going to be an arrow function. So this is how it should look like in one line. And inside, let's go ahead and write return await db.conversation.find first like this, where, and like that, open an array, open an object. Member1 ID is equal to member1 ID from our params, and member2 ID is equal to member2 ID from our params right here. And once we find that user, that conversation, let's include the entirety of member1, including their profile, so we can load their name and image, and same thing for member2. So include and also a profile true like this. Perfect. So we immediately return this await function in the find conversation. Great. And now let's create another function, const create new conversation, which is an asynchronous arrow function, which takes in member1 ID, a member2 ID, and it is an arrow function, and this is how it looks like in one line. Great. And inside of here, we're going to open a try and catch block. Inside of this catch, we don't have to log any errors. Instead, we can just return null like this. And let's go ahead and write return await db.conversation.create like this, data member1 ID, member2 ID like this. So this is a shorthand, right? This is the same thing as writing this, just using a shorthand. And let's also include the member1, and let's include their profile true like this, and same thing for member2, include their profile to be true like this. Perfect. And let's go ahead and let's just wrap this find conversation inside a try and catch block as well. So I'm gonna head and write a try block here, wrap this entire thing, and in the catch block I will just return null like this. There we go. Just in case something goes wrong, we safely return null instead of blocking the entire application. So now we have these two functions, create new conversation and find conversation, but we're not using them anywhere. So at the top, create a new function, which we are going to export. So export const get or create conversation, which is an asynchronous function, which takes in the member1 ID, which is a string, and a member2 ID, which is a string like that. Perfect. And let's go ahead and write let conversation is equal to await find conversation using a member1 ID and a member2 ID. And let me just zoom out. So first thing, we're gonna try a combination where the first member is the member1 and the second one is the member2. But we're also gonna do a pipe await find the conversation of member2 ID and a member1 ID like this. So we have a combination of the two, right? If we cannot find it in this order, we go ahead and try to find it in a reverse order like that. Perfect. So all of this is written in one line, as you can see right here. I know it's zoomed out, but I just want to show you how it's supposed to look. Great. And if there is still no conversation after both of those combinations, that means that we have to create a new conversation. So conversation is now equal to await create new conversation, member1 ID and a member2 ID like this. Perfect. And at the end, just return the conversation like this. Perfect. So if you have a feeling you've done something wrong here, you can always just visit my GitHub and find this in lib conversation and confirm. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and let's find our member ID page. So I'm going to close this. I'm going inside of the app folder, main, routes, server, server ID, find the conversation, member ID, and find the page.tsx. Perfect. Let's go ahead and let's create the interface for this. So interface member ID page is going to have params, which are going to have a member ID, which is a string, and a server ID, which is also a string like this. Let's go ahead and extract those params right here. And let's add the member ID page. And I made a mistake here, so let's name this props, member ID page props and member ID page props, so it doesn't get conflicted with this constant right here. Perfect. Now that we have that, let's go ahead and write const profile to be await current profile from @/lib current profile, which means we have to turn this page into an asynchronous function like that. If there is no profile, we can return, let me zoom in, redirect to sign in from @/clerk. So make sure you have this. And as always, I'm going to separate those two. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and let's find the current member. So const current member is equal to await db, which you can import from @/libdb. So make sure you add this line right here.